Welcome to Spike on It. My name is Dexter Baga, and this is Spike number 3 for the Node.js plus Express web app to serverless app learning session. What we had was a phonebook application that displays a list of phonebook items, name and the phone number. What we did last time was we refactored this route where we used to have the data in here. We basically mocked the data in here, hard-coded the data on the route itself, and we took that data, pushed it into an API endpoint. So now we are simply calling an API endpoint, and that API endpoint is providing us the data that used to be embedded in the route itself. Still, the data is mocked. We are not really calling um, a function at the moment that is querying a database for that list of data. I don't think it's time yet to start getting the data from a database, but the logical step would be to now move that data to be provided to us by Lambda. So Lambda is one of the compute services provided by AWS, where that function can be invoked and a new instance of its own environment is executed and launched, and then it will provide the results that we expect back. So it's completely managed. We don't need to worry about having issues with scalability, with security. It's just there, and we just simply use it. So let's just do a quick review of what we currently have on the API gateway. So what we had was a resource called list, and we have the method get against that list. So when we issue a get on the list resource, what we're supposed to get back is the same set of phone book item list as shown here. Now, if we go back to our configuration, so currently we are just mocking this integration request. It's not calling anything out. It's not really doing any processing. We are, in fact, right now hard coding the result that's being returned by the API endpoint. What we'd like to do is to have that API endpoint reach out to a Lambda function that will return to us the data. So first we will pick Lambda function option in the integration type, and on our region, now my region is currently in US East, so I will pick US East 1, and it's prompting us to create a Lambda function. Okay, now we are currently using Node.js, so I'm gonna pick Node.js, and there is a basic template here, and you might guess it's hello world, and I'm just going to pick that template and hit next. My function name, so I'm just gonna say that it's gonna be just get phone book list, and we'll simply say returns all phone book entries. Now in our code, so if you look at the sample code closely, what it's doing is we have some data, event data, and this line here is really the one that returns the value when it gets called. So we really don't need this here. And what we need is the mocked data that we were returning. So what we can do is go back to our integration response, because this is where we were faking the data. Right here. And I just need this portion of it. Go back here, and I need to define the same variable here. And then instead of returning event key 1, I'm going to return data. Now callback has two parameters. The first parameter is if you have any errors. And then the second parameter is data that will be returned to the calling function. So this is going to be a success scenario, a happy path, you might say. So we should be getting this data back when we call this lambda function. So let's scroll down a little bit. We have a few other items to look into. And if you see, we're gonna say, hey, 128 megabytes for the instance that would be invoked when we call into this function. That's a default, so we'll leave the defaults like we have done in the other configurations that we've done with the API gateway. No BPC, essentially this will use the default BPC if we don't specify another one, and we just hit next. Alright, so well, it looks like we have some required field here, existing role. So well, because we define here to select from an existing role, so we will just do that and give it a name, API to lambda. Alright, and let's see what we have next, and we create a function. Function name again is get phone book list. So it's creating it. There you go. So now let's test it and see what we expect that these are the values that will be returned. So there's a test button here, so let's just click that. I don't think it makes any difference if we pass in any value. Oops, I don't know where it went. Okay, I'm just going to remove those and say save and test. There you go. So on the bottom here, you see that we have data return as an execution result. So I think our lambda function is working properly. Great. So now what we can do is to go back to our API gateway, method get against the list resource, and we will change our integration request to now point to that lambda. So let's take a look on how to do that. So we have a lambda function selected instead of mock, and the region is US East 1 because that's where we created our lambda. So our lambda was get phone book list. There you go. It already knew that that's what we will be getting. So we say save. And we just simply click OK. We don't really mind about the previous configuration that we have. And yes, we'll allow that. Great. So I think first thing we can try to do is test this. What happens when we run this test? Hey, perfect. It still returned that data that we were expecting. So does this mean that our website will continue to work um, properly? And let's prove that by simply going back to the phone book app and just refresh it. Nice. Now we have to prove that it's really returning the data that we expect. Now, one way that we can do that is we can just simply add another entry to our phone book. And let us see if it continues to work. So I'm going to add a new name here and a new phone number. And that should be sufficient. So all I need to do is save and test this, and I should be receiving 4 phone book entries. So Kara Wagner is now in the list. So what we can do now is I think we need to publish this new version. Updated return result. Publish it. And now I have you notice these are being versioned. As I publish, they're being versioned automatically by AWS. So that takes care of issues where I may need to roll back to a previous version. So this will easily allow me to do it. So now back to the gateway and test again. Now we see Kara Wagner. So now if we go back to our website, if I refresh this, I'm expecting Kara Wagner to be now in my phone book list. I wonder if it's cached. Okay, so that doesn't seem to be returning the data that we want. However, our test suggests that this should be returning to us a new name with this data. So one of the things that we forgot to do, since we changed our API configuration, I think we may need to really deploy the API and make sure that that gets updated up in the cloud. So we changed the configuration, so we need to publish it essentially. So now let me refresh the list. There you go. So we now have a name with Kara Wagner included in the phone book list. So what do we have in here? We now have a phone book app, which right now we are hosting locally. We are debugging it locally, but it's calling Amazon's API gateway. Um, we have published there an API for our phone book, and the API endpoint that we created is invoking a Lambda function. So through the API gateway, we don't need to worry about how many hits we're getting because that's fully managed. Also, we're using Lambda, so we are also hitting something that's fully managed. So we don't have to worry about issues like scalability and security and redundancy and whatnot. I think we are at a good stopping point in this spike. So till next time, keep spiking.